Good morning, good morning, good morning, beautiful people. Good afternoon, good evening. No matter what time it is, just know this is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. As always, God is good, and He is good all the time. So, we're about to get into this next video. And it is the Democratic propaganda of mother freaking. I'm assuming this has to do with the gender stuff, but yeah. It's literally rooted around mother freaking media and what he perceives as Ben Shapiro perceives as the media coming after, children with their gay and trans propaganda. So I don't want a long introduction because I can just mother freaking ramble. Let's get into it. So we're only going to watch the first 14 minutes of this Lego.
The legacy media parrot Democratic talking point about a bill banning indoctrination of children into left-wing sexual and gender values. Biden claims that Putin is responsible for high gas prices, while the media cheer along, and the Biden administration kills a Polish offer to ship jets to Ukraine. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. Florida, which of course does have a fairly significant gay population living within it. There are a bunch of people who were tweeting out yesterday that they were being silenced and erased from Florida life because of the so-called Don't Say Gay bill. Again, if you thought that there was a bill called Don't Say Gay that had just passed the Florida legislature and that had been signed into law by the governor, number one, that would be violative of the First Amendment. And number two, you might think that there would be a punishment for doing any of these things. There is not, because there is no Don't Say Gay bill in the state of Florida. Instead, there is a bill that says that teachers are not allowed to sexually or gender ideology indoctrinate children K through 3. And then they are not allowed to do any of that stuff in a non-age appropriate fashion beyond that age. 5th, 6th grade, you're not supposed to be teaching kids about hormone treatments that change your sex, for example. That would be non-age appropriate for kids who are maybe 11 or 12 years old. The bill does not say
Age appropriate for kids 11 to 12 year old can't talk about sex changes, but they're having sex. I feel like this is the same outcry that predominantly white people, especially people in positions of power, will sit here and say, don't teach our kids about sex. Don't teach our kids about sex, which is why you don't receive sex education until damn near high school, because they put some mother freaking age limit on it. Yet you got old age people human trafficking young kids into being sex slaves. On top of the fact that teen pregnancy, although has drastically declined due to education of sex, but in the 80s and the 90s, this was a prevalent issue. High teen pregnancy rates, the same thing with sexually transmitted diseases. I mean, if you don't educate people about it, how the freak you expect them to not be dumb and ignorant about it? Learning about something existing or how this stuff works is not necessarily going to be like, oh, let me go this direction. All my life, I have seen heterosexual mother freaking relationships on TV. Majority of my life, especially in my childhood. Yet, here we are in 2022, September of this year, I would be married to my wife for 9 years. Not saying that I'm the mother freaking, the general in this whole rule, but y'all, there's a small percentage of people that are persuaded by the things that they interact. The rest of the people could process okay, I'm learning this, I'm gonna set aside this information until it's needed type of thing. And then you just go about your business. Niggas ain't out here being programmed to be. Every time I turn the TV on, all you see is drugs. Advertisement for coffee. 29 years old, still have not tasted coffee. The only drug that I have endured is eating food, including candy, mother freaking smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, and smoking weed. I ain't do no meth, ain't do no crack cocaine, no opium, no none of that. He doing no prescription pills, ain't doing no lean, no none of that. And it's broadcast everywhere, especially in hip hop. But ignorant niggas to say different.
Word gay. The bill says the word parent about 30 times because the entire bill is about how parents ought to have the chief decision-making power with regard to how their kids are taught about controversial sexual and gender issues. It is not up to the schools to indoctrinate kids into the belief that all forms of sex are morally equivalent. It is not up to schools to instruct kids on different...
If it's intended for parents to have full autonomy over their kids and their learning process, then why parents who are pro their kids being educated on this matter being ignored, amongst other things? Children can't even engage too much in like politics in a sense of like protest and all this other stuff. I mean, you got landmark cases out here because of children who will come to school wearing an anti-war bracelet. And then the school staff will be like, oh, you can't do that because you're ruining our learning environment. And then they'll go to court, you know what I'm saying? And the parents like, well, I don't mind my child wearing anti-war bracelet, but for some reason the school does. A lot of times the school trumps parents, which is weird. But because they have an agenda here, they want to convince you, no, the school is trying to give full autonomy to parents. Parents, you have no full autonomy as long as your child is in grade school. There's so many limits that the government could put on you. I.e., if a parent said, you know what, I don't want my child to be educated with this westernized, industrialized, whitewashed lies that they call an education curriculum. I don't want my child to take any parts of it. I don't even want to homeschool them. I want my child to work. All hell gonna break loose with that parent. More than likely, they're gonna take that child from that parent or put that parent in motherfucking jail. So it's not about the autonomy of the parents. It's about the control of the schools with the parents under the facade that the parents have autonomy. Wake the freak up, y'all.
different types of sex. It is not up to schools to instruct small children on the lie that men can become women and women can become men. But the entire legacy media just took what the left called this bill and then they repeated it and pretended that that was the name of the bill. Now, this would be the equivalent of if Democrats passed some sort of bill in, say, the state of New York and enshrined abortion up till the 9th month, which is what the New York legislature did. And the Republicans had termed this the Kill Babies Bill, which would be a much more accurate take on the bill than, for example, Don't Say Gay. But let's say that they had named it that, because obviously they opposed the bill, so they called...
The hypocrisy of this nigga. He can agree with some Kill Baby Bill, naming it the Kill Baby Bill, but not the Don't Say Gay. I mean, the double-mindedness in this dude is ridiculous. Anybody who uses him as a main source of information, I feel bad for you, because you're not getting this information from an objective standpoint. I mean, Teacup Hat is just, he out here feeding y'all his narrative, man.
The Let's Kill Babies Bill. And the entire media had immediately started using that language. Every headline has started using that language. That would demonstrate that the media were just lapdogs for the Republican Party. However, in this particular case, they have done that with the Democratic talking point with regard to the so-called Don't Say Gay bill. It is not a so-called Don't Say Gay bill. It is a Democratic propaganda label, the Don't Say Gay bill, because the bill, again, does not say that. I've explained this 1,000 times on the show already. Protecting the innocence of children and granting parents the authority to actually raise their children as they see fit with regard to sexual mores. This seems like baseline decency. And yet this has become the most controversial issue. The left has decided to embrace this issue. This is the issue. This is the hill they want to die on, because their idea is that if they do not get to indoctrinate all the children on their particular values, then a small fragment of kids who may be suffering from gender dysphoria.
But it's okay for the government to mother freaking brainwash you into believing that history is just white. White. The white people were just out here doing everything. They were out here working hard, building their wealth, barely enslaving people. I mean, even when they talk about Native Americans, they don't like to mention the massacre. How do you come to a place to colonize a place that is crawling with Native Americans. They're everywhere, all up in this motherfucking nation. And then now you can barely spot them, or they're blending in with other people because they're being misidentified as black or as white. In a nation that the land predominantly had majority Native Americans are now outnumbered by every single individual here, even Asians. And Asians had legislation, federal legislation, that kicked them out and prohibited them from coming here until 1943. But yeah, Asians outnumber Native Americans. There's only 2 million Native Americans out here. These niggas be okay with them pushing, one side of the indoctrination on one side and then be anti on. Oh my, you old double-minded, wavering the fence, motherfucking niggas.
Are going to kill themselves. The idea is that they are the sympathetic ones, and all they need in order to promote their sympathy is to override your parental values and destroy your relationship with your child. That's all they need. All they need is to just take your kids and put them in some sort of platonic school where they get to indoctrinate their kids, your kids, in their values. And then the world will be a utopian place. I mean, sure, your kids may believe a bunch of lies about gender. Sure, your kids may believe a bunch of things you believe to be immoral about sexuality. But at least they've been able to create a utopia of their own making. They need your kids as tools in this mission. That is why they are fussing about this bill. Again, this is not a bill that says you can't say gay in the state of Florida.
First off, it'll come a little later, but this nigga, he gets on my nerves with this whole twist in the gender dysphoria concept and then mental illness, this, mental illness, that. First off, heterosexuality, like I mentioned in a video previous to this one, heterosexuality was viewed as a motherfucking mental illness. It was viewed as illegal, taboo, just as taboo as homosexuality. Having sex for sexual pleasure was viewed as taboo, illegal, motherfucking. It was labeled a mental illness in the DSM during the Victorian era. So, if you feel that trans people have gender dysphoria, well, heterosexuals, you got something going on too, man. You got something going on too. And then while we talking about dysphorias, let's talk about racial dysphoria. How you literally got white people out here who think they're black because, well, I grew up on this culture. I grew up in the hood. And when they say hood, they mean I grew up in an area that was populated by poor, ghetto, criminalistic black people. They use ghetto and black people synonymously. It's motherfucking the ignorance that is out here. The ignorance that is out here. Gender dysphoria is a thing. So is racial dysphoria. So niggas like the dude on YouTube, Chris White, that Rachel Dolezal, racial dysphoria. Because you're convinced that you are something that you're not. Don't just put it on the trans people. We got some dysphoria out here. What about these Ashkenazi Jews who think they're the Jews that God was referring to in the Bible? For Revelations 3:9 says that God will come back. And when he does, he will set the record straight that there are people proclaiming to be the true Jews. And they are not, but they are in fact of the synagogue of Satan. This nigga wearing a teacup on his head talking about he a Jew. Now all of a sudden, Judaism is a religion. But then you got some weirdos out here, especially when Whoopi Goldberg said that, well, the Holocaust wasn't about race. It was just about people treating other people inhumanely. You had that redhead chick and other psychos out here who was like, it is about race. I thought Judaism was a religion. Now all of a sudden it's a race of people when literally any race of people can become a Jew. So what's next? Homosexuality? Sexuality is a race too? Even though all races of people can fit into heterosexuality, trans, motherfreaking gay, asexual. Oh my goodness, the ignorance out here is just
It's not even a bill that says that you can't say the word gay in school. It says that you are not allowed to indoctrinate small children into your sexual values, and the left is having a bleep fit over it, which demonstrates where they are. And the fact that the media just reflect whatever the propaganda point of the day is truly astonishing. And let me just show you some of the media headlines that have used the "don't say gay" labeling, okay, because there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. The media universally adopted this language because the memo went out. So, for example, the AP. This is just a straight headline. It's not an opinion headline. From Anthony Izagari, who I assume didn't write the headline. It says, "Don't say gay bill passes in Florida, goes to governor." That's not the name of the bill. This is like if Republicans had labeled Build Back Better, giant waste of money, pork barrel spending bullcrap bill, and that had been in the headline of an AP article. Don't say gay bill. Axios said, Florida lawmakers passed Don't Say Gay bill. That is not the name of the bill. The word gay does not appear in the bill. That is not the topic of the bill. And you have other headlines. Don't Say Gay bill passes Florida Senate. Right? All of these headlines, just over and over and over again. Every single outlet that you can imagine labeled this thing the quote-unquote Don't Say Gay bill. Every single one. It's incredible. They went along with it. We're talking about Axios. We're talking about ABC News. We're talking about NBC News. We're talking about pretty much every outlet you could possibly imagine calls it the Don't Say Gay bill because they are all on the same page. They get the talking points from the Democratic Party and they walk directly in line with it. And this is coming directly from the White House.
Well, don't say all the media, but then you didn't post any conservative Republican media channels up there. Just out here pushing narratives, Mr. Ben Shapiro.
Make no mistake. This started ground up from a bunch of Democratic activists, and now, because this White House is run by Democratic radicals, it is not a moderate administration, it does not even pretend to be a moderate administration anymore. Jen Psaki yesterday...
First off, before you start complaining about how the White House is predominantly Democrat, please do not overlook the fact that politics in general, all positions, have been teeter-tottering between Democrats and Republicans. The motto of this motherfucking raggedy country is no taxation without representation. Yet you have people who check their ideological, the ideology as motherfucking independent or Green Party or birthday party or something random. There's no representation. I mean, none of these positions of power being held by those that are incarcerated. Ain't none of these positions of power being held by immigrants, but yet all these people get taxed. No matter how little they paycheck, getting taxed. I don't see these spaces being filled up by children between the ages of 14 and 17. And legally, it's here in New York State, a 14-year-old can apply for a worker's permit and work. 14 to 17-year-olds are working, but they can't vote for who governs them. Stop crying, trying to appeal to one side, because at the end of the day, our nation is what they call bipartisan, which means there's two groups, which makes no motherfucking sense because there's not two ideologies in this entire nation. Freaking psychos.
Suggested that this bill was quote unquote horrific and said that if you don't teach a kindergartner that boys can be girls and girls can be boys, or if there's a bill banning you from doing so, if you don't teach a second grader that all forms of sex are exactly morally equivalent and that all lifestyle choices are exactly the same and deserve equal respect and acceptance, all of them. If you don't do any of that stuff, then this is actually a form of bullying. They're protecting your kids by indoctrinating them in their values. By taking your kids and turning them against your values. This is how they avoid bullying, because you're the bullies. You, the parents, are the problem. Again, this is so deeply ingrained in left-wing thinking right now that parents are the obstacle to a better tomorrow. This is why you saw Terry McAuliffe say in that Virginia governor's race that parents should not have authority to determine what their kids learn, because parents are the enemy. Parents are the problem. Those little platoons, those families that represent the...
But to be fair, that has been said before, even by Republicans.
The most valuable and the most durable form of human connection that we have, they're an obstacle to the government being the great unifying glue in American life.
I'm just saying, if y'all care so much about kids, especially you, Ben, why don't you, make it your business to travel around this nation to protect the children? Here in Rochester, it is not uncommon to see police questioning minors without their parents, even though there is a mother freaking federal law that mother freaking obliges government entities, government, actors to not do anything with minors unless their parent or legal guardian is present. Yet, disproportionately, racial minorities and poor white kids, poor individuals are being mother freaking questioned and harassed by the police and their minors. They're also being abused by them. You know what I'm saying? In the whole shebang. I mean, and at least if you're going to try to, bring some awareness to some issues in the education system for youth, how about you talk about how the vast majority of children education is dilapidating, because majority of the children around this mother freaking nation attends a public school. Yet around this nation, public schools are being drowned out by charter schools, and charter schools are now draining the funding that is given to public schools. And the only people that's going to these charter schools are people who can afford to attend these charter schools. And a lot of the times they're outside of the reach of, many of these families. And like I said, majority of this U.S. population is poor. And with that being said, a lot of people lack motherfucking transportation. And I know it's easy to sit here and be like, well, why don't you take the bus? Or why don't you do this? And why don't you do that? Well, parents honestly they barely have the means to raise their child, let alone to be, hopping on buses and dragging their kids around when they got to go to work. And a lot of these parents are, non-nuclear makeups where kids are being raised by aunts, uncles, brothers and sisters, grandparents, not just parents. You know what I'm saying? And or their parents are single parent, they raise in a single parent household. So that parent, if their work schedule conflicts with school, you know what I'm saying? The chances of that parent being able to do anything for their child is slim to none because of all the restrictions that's in place. And then the worst part of it all, because he loves to bring it back to voting. Well, why don't we get, Ben Shapiro, why don't you push for us getting it, like voting set up as like a holiday where people get time off from work and stuff and school to motherfreaking vote. So that way they can make better, decisions and choices that benefit them and their children. But we don't want to talk about any of that. We just want to talk this one-sided motherfreaking narrative.
They want to be able to take your kids away from you and then turn their values against your values. This is their goal. They want it. And they will call it a form of bullying if they don't get what they want. So you must be bullied. You must be silenced. Your kids must be told stuff that you don't have to know about it. What this bill does, it says that if your kid starts being indoctrinated in this stuff, parents have to be notified. Democrats object to this. They don't want parents notified. They want to be able to tell your child that he can be a she in first grade and not tell you about it. They want to be able to teach your kids about myriad forms of sexual exploration when the kid's 8, and they don't want to have to tell you about it.
It's funny that he talks all this stuff, and I remember when I was in grade school, I was probably like in elementary. I think I was like maybe 7 or 8, and the teacher, for some reason, like that day, I don't even think we had a curriculum, but we was watching a movie. And I always remember my parents said, if your teachers ever try to get you to watch, like Harry Potter or movies that my parents had deemed, part of witchcraft because of our religious beliefs, that I didn't have to sit in and for me to call them. And I remember that I had this teacher who literally played a Harry Potter movie. And I had told the teacher, I was like, my parents don't want me to watch this movie. And the teacher was really sitting there going back and forth with me about it just being a movie and blah, 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 blah. And then I'm just telling them like, well, this is what my parents said. My dad said, if you have a problem with it, you can always call them. And after pushing and pushing and pushing for, I don't know how long, the teacher finally let me leave, but I think it was more of like a detention leave where I had to literally sit in the spots where they held students for detention or ISS, aka in school suspension and stuff. And I wasn't even given any like class or schoolwork. So honestly, I don't know what happened there. I just remember going home, telling my dad, and my dad ended up calling the teacher, cursing the teacher out, amongst other things. And I feel like at that point, that's when my grades were the lowest because they were like some C's and stuff. And so I remember, I feel like it probably didn't work out too well for my dad with me in that stupid movie. But like maybe I had like a missed assignment because I didn't attend that movie or something like that. But that just makes me think like this dude sits here talking all this crazy stuff, but it's always been like this. It's always been like this, where the school systems, and not even just the school, but the government think that they know your job or they know how to parent or make decisions for your kids better than you. Because it was the same thing like that when we went to the hospital, you know, for just our regular doctor's appointments. These doctors would try to be all up in my dad's business and all this other. It was just, I don't know, it's weird. So I just think it's crazy that he got so much to say about that. But it's like, nigga, these are issues that are happening all the time, and you're just bringing awareness to it because gayness is involved. Like, way to show your mother freaking, you know, biases.
Otherwise, what the hell are they objecting to? So they have to lie. They have to call it the Don't Say Gay bill because that's not what the bill is. And the entire media picks that up and then uses that as the propagandistic talking point. Here's Jen Psaki leading the charge.
A bill like this, a bill that would discriminate against families, against kids, put these kids in a position of not getting the support they need at a time where that's exactly what they need, is discriminatory. It's a form of bullying. It is horrific.
Oh, it's horrific. Now, get this straight. It's horrific if you don't get to indoctrinate my kids. That's horrific. If I teach my kids my values, that's horrific. Because parents are the problem. They are the problem. Again, there is an entire group of people on the left, and all they wish to do is indoctrinate kids into these sorts of values. They want kids to learn these sorts of values.
I think it's funny how he's sitting here talking about the left, the Democrats, and all this other stuff is pushing to indoctrinate certain values onto your kids, yet the Republicans literally have these little school-like programs set up for children, and they start very young where they start shaping them to have Republican ideologies. Google it. It's literally structured like some school program where you send your kid there and they start grooming them to have Republican ideas. But this nigga want to sit here and talk about how the motherfucking Democrats are doing it. Y'all got straight up programs that is dedicated to grooming young people to thinking like y'all. The hypocrisy.
That's the worst in public schools because there you're actually hijacking kids against their parents' wishes. There are a whole group of parents who consensually, for some odd reason, decide that it's a good idea to...
Gotta open the window, I'm out of smoke.
give activists free reign over their children to turn them into widgets on behalf of radical left-wing sexual morality. Which is why you end up with a sex education summer camp for children in grades 3 to 5 in Indianapolis that teaches kids as young as 7 about sexual education, including a condom demonstration for children. According to the Daily Wire, there's a flyer for this particular sex ed summer camp for kids in northern Indianapolis. And it says at this age, kids are primed for level-headed learning. They're information gatherers. There's no shame or ickiness associated with using Band-Aids. That same philosophy is applied to condoms and other barriers in this body-positive curriculum. In addition, kids will not be separated by gender when learning about puberty, bodies, and sex because, quote, gender is a spectrum, and everyone needs to learn about all bodies, according to this flyer. And there
I honestly don't see anything wrong with that flyer. I understand that you're upset that they're not only including sex education, but, I don't know, queer education?
parents will delegate their kids to places like this, which is how you end up with video of Chasen Buttigieg, Pete Buttigieg's husband, teaching small children. I mean, these kids these are kids. These are like 10, 11, 12-year-old kids, to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the gay flag. Now, parents presumably gay...
What? What gay flag? And then I remember in grade school where it was predominantly white teachers, mother freaking getting bent out of shape when us black folks, especially us black folks, didn't stand and did the whole, I'm pledging allegiance. Why are you complaining about stuff that y'all have done already? Republicans have installed forcing things upon people, and not even just Republicans, but yes, Democrats too, because once upon a time, modern day Republicans were called whom? Democrats.
Give their permission to this sort of thing. But imagine, for example, and I'm not going to go into what I think of parents who do this sort of thing, but assume that this were not happening for a second at a place where parents gave permission. It were just happening at your school. And teachers were doing this with your kids and not informing you. Shouldn't that be illegal? Wouldn't you imagine it should be? But again, the folks who believe that these are the best values believe that you should have no say in whether these values get taught to your kids. Here's Chasten Buttigieg, Pete Buttigieg's husband, an ardent opponent of the bill in Florida, teaching small children to pledge allegiance to the gay flag, which, by the way, just on a moral level, you probably shouldn't be pledging allegiance to any flag that is just about where you wish to put your genitals. That just seems like I don't care.
Don't pledge of allegiance to a flag that's about where you place your genitals, but you can pledge of allegiance to a flag that is tailored to a country that annihilated and massacred its native residents for them to have that position of power, and then enslaved black people, and then pulled Beacon's rebellion, divide and conquer tactics, and had motherfreaking poor white people, Latinos, and Asians, and black people, and natives, and everyone else in between against each other. I see your double mind. Continue, Ben. Continue.
What we're talking about? If there were a straight pride flag, I don't believe that you should be paying homage to it. It's a ridiculous notion. Just clearly, the idea that the center of your personality should be who you wish to have sex with or how you are oriented, and that this is something you should pledge allegiance to, is a very bizarre one. And it's meant in opposition, presumably, to other values, which is why you do it in the first place. Here is Chasten Buttigieg teaching small kids about this.
All right. I pledge my heart. To the rainbow. The not so typical gay camp. One camp. Full of pride. Indivisible. With affirmation and equal rights.
Okay, this is a bit propaganda. I think it's a bit weird too. I ain't even gonna front. I ain't even gonna hold you. John, definitely weird. Definitely weird. However, this looks like a LGBTQ club, because they had weird stuff going like this when I was in school. I was in high school. I think it was from like 2005, maybe 2005 or 6 to 2010 when I graduated, and our LGBTQ club looked similar to this. They literally, like, that club was a bit ostracizing, because for the straight people, I remember that was a thing where they said, like, we don't have a club to attend, and, you know, there's not places that we can go for field trips and stuff. And I can see that. It is very ostracizing. However, for groups of people that have been ostracized out of spaces that have been made for such, like, certain groups anyways, kind of negates that fact. It's like how white people are like, well, why y'all have a pride festival or whatever? We don't have a white festival, and it's not true. There's an Irish, you know, but at the end of the day, every festival, every celebration is for whiteness, because majority of these celebrations and everything that exists is like holidays. It's white people who made these time days off. You know what I'm saying? Just recently, they just added Juneteenth to the shebang. But for the longest, I mean, even Martin Luther King, it had to be permitted by white people. Niggas just don't get nothing. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know. It's one of them things where it's just like, I feel like it's like using a nigga. If you ain't black, you can't use it, you know? Yeah, it's very ostracizing to you. Tuck titty. That's the world. The world is unfair.
Rights for all.
With affirmation and equal rights for all.
Watch your heads.
pledging allegiance to the American flag would be indoctrination. Pledging allegiance to the gay pride flag, that's just raising our kids in a healthy and decent way. So the left has decided that Disney has to sound off on this because this is the shtick. If you're a corporation, you must listen to what the left wants from you. Well, if all this makes you uncomfortable, I have a solution for all your comfort needs. I'm talking.
I just wanted to show that little snippet because it kind of connects with the video that I had posted previous to this one. But I don't know. Leave your comments down below if you want to share anything with me. I guess like, comment, share, subscribe. I don't like saying that. I think it's a bit redundant because me saying it ain't going to get you to motherfucking do it anyways. You know, you're going to do what you want to do. So, and I'm for that. Have your own autonomy. But, yeah, I don't know. I hope you learned something from this. You know, you're able to see it from an objective standpoint. Yeah. It's a touchy subject, but God bless.